Chapter 1. The Death on the Peacock Staircase. It was on a raw autumn afternoon that Hercule Poirot received the summons which would draw him from the comfort of his Baker Street flat into the swirling winds and copper leaves of the English countryside. The letter, delivered by hand, bore the crest of Ivyland Manor, a carved peacock perched above a shield, and was penned in an urgent yet precise hand. Monsieur Poirot, your reputation for unravelling the most baffling of puzzles precedes you. I beg you to come at once to Ivyland Manor. A most tragic occurrence has befallen our household upon the grand Peacock Staircase, and local authorities are at a loss. Pray join us without delay. Yours in desperation, Lady Arabella Bramwell. Poirot, his round head framed by neatly brushed hair and his moustaches perfectly waxed, examined the envelope with keen interest. He turned to Captain Hastings, who sat beside him polishing his revolver. You see, Hastings, how the natural world echoes the unnatural act before us. When peacocks unfurl their plumage, they show a myriad of eyes, yet none of them saw the crime committed here. Hastings looked up in mild exasperation. Mon Dieu, Hercule, must you always analyze the symbolism before we've even had breakfast? Breakfast may nourish the body, Hastings, but a fitting metaphor feeds the intellect. Poirot tied his bow tie with deliberate care. I suggest we take the midday train to Greenhaven Station and make our way to Ivyland by motor car. Lady Arabella implied that haste is of the essence. By 11 o'clock, Poirot and Hastings were ensconced in a first-class compartment bound for countryside leaves and whispering hedgerows. Poirot consulted his notebook, where he had already jotted Lady Arabella's address and the sketch of a peacock motif. Hastings leaned out the window, admiring poplars spinning gold. "It's rather charming, in a Gothic sort of way," he observed. "Charming indeed," Poirot agreed. "A manor of dark wood and stony turrets, with a staircase said to be modelled after the tail of a peacock. Magnificent, but prone to tragedies of hubris and concealment." Hastings frowned. Tragedies of hubris? Ah, yes. The ancient Greeks believed that the peacock's eyes were watchful symbols, but when those eyes are turned inward, like the carved gaze of a staircase, one might fall prey to secrets hidden in plain sight. Hastings snorted. "I suppose you mean someone fell down the stairs?" Poirot allowed himself a tiny smile. "We shall soon see, but enough speculation. I look forward to examining the scene of the unfortunate event." Greenhaven Station, though small, buzzed with activity as the train disgorged its passengers into a platform of thatched shelter and iron benches. A motor car, a sleek black vintage model, awaited, driven by Lady Arabella's chauffeur, Mr. Perkins. He doffed his cap as the two gentlemen approached. "Captain Hastings, Monsieur Poirot, Lady Arabella will be most grateful for your swift arrival." Poirot offered a slight nod of thanks and slid behind the chauffeur. The car purred to life and set off down a winding lane, past orchards heavy with russet fruit and fields lit by the shafts of an autumn sun. The manor came into view at last, a formidable grey stone edifice perched atop a gentle rise, its masonry veined with ivy and crowned by a cupola. The front gate bore two wrought-iron peacock silhouettes, their tails entwined in elegant scrollwork. As the car crawled up the drive, Hastings spied Lady Arabella waiting on the wide flagstone porch. She wore a sombre gown of deep emerald velvet, her silver hair swept into a braided chignon, and a strand of pearls at her throat. Her eyes, the hue of dusk, shone with gratitude and anxiety. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, thank you for coming," she greeted, her voice tremulous yet composed. "Please forgive the musty air of sorrow that fills these halls." Poirot bowed with graceful courtesy. "Lady Arabella, your note was most urgent. Pray, do not distress yourself further. We shall restore order in due course." She led them into a lofty hall whose centrepiece was the Peacock Staircase, a curving flight of steps whose balustrade sprouted bronze peacock feathers, each eye rendered in malachite and lapis lazuli. At the foot of the stairs lay the body of Mr. Walter Bramwell, Lady Arabella's only surviving brother, sprawled in tragic repose. Hastings covered his mouth, but Poirot's expression remained poised, his aquamarine eyes taking in every detail. "Mr. Bramwell," Lady Arabella whispered, stepping forward. "He was to inherit the estate, yet this morning he climbed these stairs to fetch tea, and was found at its base, as you see." She broke off with a shudder. Hastings knelt beside the body. The man's head had struck the marble floor. Blood seeped from a wound at his temple, and his hand still clutched a silver candlestick. Its wick burned to ash. "It appears he fell," Hastings said quietly. "But this candlestick, he must have struck himself as he fell, or perhaps was struck by someone else." Poirot crouched, inspecting the wound's angle and the arc of the blood spatter. He noted the candlestick's heft and the wrenching marks on Bramwell's cuff. "Observe, Hastings, the wound is a laceration, too jagged for a simple tumble, and here—" He tapped a faint bruise above the man's wrist. "A defensive mark, perhaps caught in a struggle." He rose, turning to Lady Arabella. "Madame, we must regard this not as an accident, but as a crime, cloaked in misfortune. Lady," Arabella covered her face. "Oh, heavens! Who would—" She broke off, her voice failing. Poirot gently guided her to a nearby settee. Hastings stood watch over the body. "Monsieur," Hastings whispered, "this is more than a fall. Someone pushed him." "Indeed," Poirot confirmed in a low voice. "And the choice of the Peacock Staircase is no accident. That staircase is both monument and trap. Its polished marble is treacherous when gilded by candlelight. Our murderer counted on the stairs to conceal the blow." Lady Arabella rose. "We shall assemble the household at once." She moved toward a door in the panelled wall. "My guests, whom my brother invited for the weekend, await breakfast. I must inform them of my brother's death." As she left, Hastings peered at Poirot. "Your little grey cells are already blazing, my friend." Poirot tapped a gloved finger to his moustache. "Yes, Hastings. For every fall from grace, a motive lies hidden in shadows. But the watchers in the peacock's eyes are many, and one among them bore a heavier secret this night." He traced a fingertip along the balustrade's feather patterns, each one a carved eye, silent, observing. "We shall question every soul under this roof. Only then will the death on the Peacock Staircase reveal its final truth. And so, beneath the painted plumage of bronze and mosaics, the game was afoot. A puzzle of pride and poison, of family feuds and forbidden desires, all waiting to be uncovered by the deft little grey cells of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 2. Testimonies Under the Peacock's gaze, lady, Arabella Bramwell's drawing-room was hushed with attention as thick as the velvet drapes. Portraits of Bramwell ancestors lined the walls, their stiff collars and wary gazes seeming to follow Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings as they entered, summoned silently by the butler, Mr. Giles Harper. The servants, a small company of 5, gathered by the hearth, each wearing the pallor of shock. Mrs. Cartwright, the housekeeper, Mr. Perkins, the chauffeur, Miss Violet Fairchild, the governess, Mr. Joseph Roscoe, the gardener, and young Emily Talbot, the parlour-maid. Lady Arabella, her eyes shadowed with grief, greeted them with a tremor of voice that betrayed her composed facade. "My dear friends," she began, glancing at Poirot, then at her staff, "I have asked you here to assist Mr. Poirot in answering the terrible question, how did my brother, Walter Bramwell, come to his death upon the Peacock Staircase? I implore you all to speak freely and without fear." Poirot inclined his head, gesturing to the assembled company to be seated around the circular rug. "Madame," he said softly, "we must begin at the beginning. I ask each of you to recount, in your own words, your whereabouts from the hour of 8 o'clock last evening until the body was discovered at breakfast this morning. Speak truthfully, for only the truth can reveal the culprit." Silence fell. Mrs. Cartwright stooped and Prim cleared her throat first. "I was in my quarters mouthing over the night's accounts. I retired at 10, then rose at dawn and came straight here, discovering my master's body almost at once." Her voice quavered. Hastings noted her threadbare gloves clutched in both hands. Next, Emily Talbot, her youthful face pinched with fear, spoke. "I polished the silver in the hall until 9. Then I helped Mrs. Cartwright with linen until 9:30, when I went to bed. I only heard a thump around midnight, but thought it a cupboard door. I stayed in my room until called." Poirot listened, his eyes calm. "Thank you." He turned to Mr. Perkins, the chauffeur, whose posture remained stiff. "You serve as Lady Arabella's driver. Were you called to bring Mr. Bramwell to dinner last night?" Perkins shook his head. "No, sir. I completed my rounds by 8. I then polished the Bentley and retired to the servants' wing. I never entered the main house after that. Miss Fairchild, the governess, smoothed her gloves. I left the library at 8:30 after the post arrived, then read by candlelight in my sitting-room until 11 before retiring. I heard no disturbance. The night was silent." Poirot's brow furrowed as he nodded. He turned to Mr. Roscoe, the gardener, whose workman's hands were surprisingly clean. "You, sir, would have no reason to linger indoors." Roscoe, a tall man with mud-stained boots, spoke with slow sincerity. "I finished tending the winter roses at dusk. I came inside to warm myself by the fire in the morning. Room only after dawn. I sleep in the stable quarters, and would never chance the main staircase at night." Finally, Giles Harper, the solemn butler, rose. His calm demeanour belied the storm in his eyes. "I attended to Lady Arabella's needs, and saw to the closing of the wine-cellar at 10. I then locked the front door, secured the pantries, and retired. I was roused at 6 when I heard the master's body had been discovered." Poirot nodded appreciatively. "Your accounts align. Now, let us consider the discovery. It was Mr. Harper who found Mr. Bramwell at the foot of the staircase." Harper inclined his head. "Yes, sir. I came to summon Lady Arabella at precisely 6, as arranged by Nurse Cartwright's brother, Dr. Elliot, her personal physician, scheduled to visit at that hour. I found Master Walter upon the floor and immediately summoned help. Hastings exchanged a look with Poirot. No one mentioned Dr. Elliot's involvement yet. Poirot probed gently. Dr. Elliot's visit, was it expected by all? Lady Arabella spoke then. My brother complained of a headache last evening, and I asked Dr. Elliot to call early this morning. None of you needed be present for that, but I felt caution-wise, given Walter's recent tension with the solicitor. She shivered, then sank into an armchair. Poirot studied her, then turned back to the staff. I thank you all. I shall require your continued cooperation as we examine the staircase and the scene of the fall. But first, Hastings and I must see the corridor outside the library where Mr. Bramwell was last observed. They followed him through a side door into a panelled corridor. Poirot paused beneath a small grandfather clock, whose pendulum ticked with methodical precision. "Notice," he said, pointing to a faint smudge of mud on the polished floor by the baseboard, matching the stain on Roscoe's boots. Roscoe swallowed. "That must be from last evening," he stammered. "I trod through mud in the rose garden and passed here on my way to the greenhouse to prune damaged blossoms." Poirot nodded, marking the smudge on his mental map. At the end of the corridor stood the grand Peacock Staircase, a magnificent structure of marble steps curving in a sinuous arc, the balustrade's bronze feathers curling like living plumage. As Poirot ascended, he ran a gloved finger along the polished edge, pausing at the sixth riser from the bottom. There, a slight chip marred the marble, revealing that the edge had been struck yesterday. Hastings crouched to examine a small bloodstain on the step, already cleansed but faintly visible under bright lamplight. Poirot's gaze sharpened. The blow which felled Mr. Bramwell was struck here, at this very step, with a heavy instrument. The blood transferred as his head struck the floor. The chip suggests an implement was used, perhaps the bronze candlestick found in his hand. He tapped the balustrade's feather, where a touch of green patina rubbed off onto his glove. And here, the killer grasped the railing, leaving this trace. Hastings frowned. So, it was a deliberate push, aided by the stair's treachery. "You do understand?" Poirot surveyed the ascent. The curve forces one to turn away from the balustrade, exposing the right temple to an assailant behind. The killer waited in ambush above, struck with the candlestick, then let Walter fall into oblivion. He turned. "We must speak to Dr. Elliot at once. If he arrived at 6, he may have passed the body and inadvertently moved evidence, or seen something that might have been concealed." They found the physician in Lady Arabella's boudoir, examining his bag. Tall and austere, Dr. Reginald Elliot's hawk-like nose and piercing grey eyes gave him a professional air. He greeted Poirot coolly. "Monsieur, I arrived to tend Master Walter, only to find him beyond aid. The butler summoned me immediately." Poirot inclined his head. "Your movements, doctor, are of interest. Did you pass the staircase on your way to the library?" Elliot considered before answering. "Yes, I took the corridor to avoid Mrs. Cartwright's quarters. When I reached the hall, I saw Walter lying on the floor." "Before or after seeing Lady Arabella?" "Before," Elliot replied at once. "I knelt to check a pulse. None. Then I summoned Mr. Harper." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And did you examine the wound?" Elliot nodded. It was a gruesome gash at the temple. I believed he had fallen headlong into the stone. And the candlestick clasped in his right hand? Elliot frowned. It lay there when I arrived. I did not think it remarkable. Poirot studied him. You have treated head injuries for many years, Doctor. Would one struck thus retain the candlestick? Elliot winced. No, of course not. A blow of that violence would have flung it from his grasp. Unless he was holding it when struck, in which case the wound was administered to a man who grasped his only weapon. Poirot nodded. Exactly, Doctor. Master Walter fought back, and our murderer must have taken that candlestick away, or left it deliberately to implicate another. He turned to Hastings. We have yet to find the missing implement. Leaving Elliot in thoughtful repose, Poirot and Hastings returned to the hall. Poirot tapped his chin. Our circle narrows. Someone among the staff, cunning enough to wield a heavy bronze within a handspan, and bold enough to strike above the curve. I suspect the very person whose hand I found green patina upon. Someone familiar with the peacock motif. Hastings frowned. Who among them polished the feathers? Poirot's expression turned triumphant. Mr. Giles Harper, the butler, and Mr. Perkins, the chauffeur, who handles the carriage's ornamental plumes. We must examine their gloves and tools at once. As they hurried back to the drawing-room, Lady Arabella's voice floated down the corridor. Monsieur Poirot, will you tell me if my brother's death— Her voice broke. Poirot placed a reassuring hand on her arm. Madame, the truth shall be revealed, one way or another. And so, beneath the watchful gaze of stone peacock eyes, Poirot prepared to expose the killer's hand, certain that each shining feather bore the faintest trace of guilt, and that no secret, however artfully concealed, could withstand the scrutiny of his little grey cells. Chapter 3. The Whisper of Malice. The mid-morning light softened the panelling of Ivyland Manor's grand hall as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings prepared to pursue the two chief suspects, Mr. Giles Harper, the butler, and Mr. Perkins, the chauffeur. The faint trace of green patina upon the balustrade's feathers, coupled with the bruising and defensive mark on Walter Bramwell's wrist, had pointed in their direction. Now Poirot would test the strength of their alibis and uncover the poison of motive that lurked beneath civility. Mon ami, Poirot murmured as he adjusted his cravat, we have only the candlestick and the bruise. We must now find the candlestick itself, or a telltale fingerprint, to confirm which hand wielded it. Without that, our suspicions remain whispers in the dark. Hastings nodded. I suggest we start with Mr. Harper's quarters. As butler, he would have known the stair's exact vulnerability and have ready access to the bronze plumes for polishing. And he claimed he secured the pantries at 10. Yet the murder must have occurred after that, around midnight. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Precisely. And if he polished the feathers last evening, he might have had the candlestick nearby, perhaps even replaced it deliberately to frame another. They ascended the narrow servants' staircase, whose steps creaked underfoot, to reach the butler's suite, a neat room furnished with a single mahogany dresser, a crested silver tray for Lady Arabella's keys, and tucked beneath a side table, a small toolbox of cleaning supplies. Hastings flicked on a lamp. Let us see what he hides here. Poirot knelt and examined the floor's polished veneer. Beneath the table, he found 3 small brass boxes, one labelled feather polish, another brass cleaner, and a third, curiously, spare wax. He opened the spare wax container to reveal lumps of coloured green compound identical to the patina on the balustrade. He placed a small sample among his notes. This alone confirms Mr. Harper's work on the peacock motif. But more important, he tapped the feather polish. The candlestick might have been hidden among these supplies. Hastings peered into the feather polish box and recoiled. Good heavens! There's a candlestick here, monsieur. It has been masked in Polish. He lifted a tarnished brass candlestick, its wick stub still blackened. This is the murder weapon. Poirot rose, holding the candlestick by its base with a gloved hand. No doubt, a man who wields such an item in anger would seek to conceal it among similar objects. And here it lay, in the place where only he would think to search. They pocketed the candlestick carefully and left Mr. Harper's quarters, Poirot tapping his fingers together in silent satisfaction. One piece of the puzzle is now in our hands. But we must confront Mr. Harper with it gently, lest he destroy further evidence. Back in the drawing-room, Lady Arabella, Miss Fairchild, the governess, and Mrs. Cartwright, the housekeeper, sat in tense anticipation. The chiming of the grandfather clock punctuated the hush as Poirot placed the candlestick upon a low table and addressed Mr. Harper, who stood like a statue in the corner. "Mr. Harper, would you explain how this candlestick came to be among your cleaning supplies?" Poirot's tone was courteous, but his eyes bore into the butler's calm mask. Harper swallowed. I was polishing the stair balustrade last evening. The candlestick's brass matches the feathers, so I removed it from the hall for convenience and placed it with my cleaning tools. I meant to return it this morning." Poirot inclined his head. "Convenient, yes, but a bold leap. Pray, where did you keep the candlestick when you retired?" Harper hesitated, brow glistening. "In my wardrobe, wrapped in cloth, which you surely passed this morning when you retrieved your clothes." Poirot's lips curved. "And yet you brought it here, to the drawing-room, rather than leaving it untouched. Most curious." Lady Arabella rose. "Giles, if you did this out of habit, why not say so? No one would fault you for tidiness." Harper's shoulders sagged. "My lady, I was foolish. I never imagined he was my friend too. But when I arranged the supplies, I forgot where I placed it. Hastings, may we test for fingerprints?" Poirot asked softly. Hastings retrieved a small kit. They dusted the candlestick's shaft and found a partial print on the underside, clearly Harper's glove pattern. Harper flinched. "I refuse to believe I killed him." Poirot's expression softened. "I do not yet accuse you of intentional malice, but the fingerprints place this weapon in your knowledge. Now tell us, what drove you to strike?" Harper's composure crumbled. He sank into a chair. "Sir Walter threatened to dismiss me. He learned of my debts incurred to save his reputation. If I did not secure funds to cover losses at the stock market, losses tied to a bad loan he pressed upon me, he would expose me and ruin my family. When I asked for time, he refused. In desperation, I went to confront him on the staircase. I never meant to kill, only to scare him. He buried his face in his hands. I struck too hard. He fell." Lady Arabella gasped. "Giles, my dear friend, Why did you not come to me?" Harper uncovered his eyes, rimmed red. "I was too ashamed. I thought I could set things right, but instead I took a life." Poirot allowed the confession to settle before speaking. "Mr. Harper, you have availed yourself of truth at last. Yet a confession alone does not a solution make. We must confirm your timeline and explain the bruise on Mr. Bramwell's wrist." He held up his gloved hand. "Did you struggle? Did Mr. Bramwell defend himself?" Harper nodded. "Yes, he grabbed my wrist. I struck him as he lifted the candlestick. The bruise is from his own grasp." Poirot turned to Hastings. "Then the matter is clear. Our culprit acted from fear of disgrace. But I must restore Lady Arabella's peace." He approached her. "Madame, may I suggest that you instruct Mr. Harper to remain under observation until authorities arrive? His remorse is his redemption, but your family's safety is paramount." Lady Arabella, tears gleaming, nodded. "Of course. Giles, you shall remain in your quarters." She paused, then embraced the still haggard butler. "We shall face this together." Later, as the autumn sun lingered over Ivyland's turrets, Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart. In the grand hall, the Peacock Staircase stood silent sentinel, the bronze feathers gleaming once more in the afternoon light. Hastings slung his coat over his shoulder. "Well, Hercule, we've unearthed motive and weapon. Do you think the police will accept his confession without further ado?" Poirot tapped his finger to his moustache. "Yes, though it grieves me that a friendship was shattered. Yet truth demands its price. Better his conscience than a man's deception remain unpunished." He turned to Lady Arabella. "Madam, you have my deepest sympathy. I trust this affair shall soon fade from your halls, leaving only the memory of a brave brother and the guardianship of your family's honour." Lady Arabella curtsied. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, I thank you both. Ivyland Manor will never forget your kindness and your little grey cells." As they descended into the courtyard, the leaves swirled in golden eddies around the motor car. Hastings leaned out to bid farewell. "Goodbye, Ivyland. May your peacocks forever stand watch, this time in peace." Poirot settled into the car, adjusting his gloves. "Yes, Hastings. And may the watchful eyes of justice always guard against secrets meant to topple men from greatness." With that, the engines roared, and Ivyland Manor receded into the distance, its Peacock Staircase silent once more, awaiting only the soft footsteps of children, not the heavy weight of guilty despair. Chapter 4. The Hidden Venom. Although Mr. Giles Harper's confession had brought a measure of relief to Ivyland Manor, Hercule Poirot felt uneasy. The butler's tearful admission that he had struck his master in a panic explained the bruise upon Walter Bramwell's wrist and the jagged laceration upon his temple. Yet something, to Poirot's little grey cells, remained amiss. How could a single blow have felled a man of Bramwell's robust build so completely? And why did his body bear no other marks save the bruise and the fatal cut? Late that afternoon, Dr. Reginald Elliot, the family physician, paid a second visit to the beer scene. Poirot observed from the doorway of the grand hall as the doctor lifted Walter Bramwell's corpse from its bier and carried it with quiet ceremony to the manor's private morgue. Hastings drifted to Poirot's side. "You look troubled, mon ami," Your butler confessed. The weapon is found. What more can there be? Poirot's moustaches twitched. Hastings, I respect Mr. Harper's courage. Yet in my experience, confessions spring from conscience only when conscience knows the whole truth. I suspect our poor victim suffered a second more subtle blow, one invisible to the eye. De Conchauve raised an eyebrow. You suspect poison? Precisely. Poirot tapped his fingers together. Let us speak with Dr. Elliot in his study. Dr. Elliot's study was a sober chamber of oaken shelves lined with medical tomes and jars of tinctures. A subdued lamp cast its glow upon an impressive array of glass flasks. Elliot stood at his writing table, poring over the inquest forms. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, he greeted with a polite nod. I trust you wish to hear my findings. Poirot inclined his head. Doctor, will you tell us your observations regarding Master Bramwell's death? Elliot folded the inquest documents and beckoned them closer. Externally, the wound to his temple was fatal. Yet internally, I discovered evidence of 2 poisons in his system. A potent dose of digitalis and traces of antimony. He paused, noting their astonished expressions. Digitalis alone would have induced cardiac failure within minutes. Mr. Bramwell's fall from the staircase likely followed the initial ingestion of the toxin. The blow with the candlestick served only to disguise the true manner of death. Poirot allowed a silent moment for the weight of this revelation. Your acumen is most impressive, Doctor. Digitalis, a heart stimulant turned lethal, and antimony, used as an emetic or to precipitate vomiting. Who among us would possess these? Elliot's lips thinned. Digitalis is derived from foxglove, common in the Manor's gardens, within Mr. Roscoe's domain. Antimony tincture I keep in my dispensary for cases of dysentery. Both could be administered with discretion. Hastings rubbed his chin. A second attempt on Walter's life then, this time with calculated intention. But why 2 poisons? Poirot's expression cleared. Digitalis alone might have been traced to foxglove in the rose border. A second, more obscure poison conceals the first. The murderer ensured the dose was not vomited away. He tapped his temple. Our scapegoat, Mr. Harper, may have struck the blow, but he was not the original assassin. He covered mortal symptoms, never knowing his master was already dying. Elliot inclined his head gravely. Quite so. Or perhaps he believed the blow would complete the deed begun by poison. But I suggest you question Miss Fairchild, the governess. She brought Master Bramwell his morning tea, but served it later than usual. Poirot and Hastings found Miss Violet Fairchild in the conservatory, cradling a steaming teacup. The afternoon sun glinted upon exotic palms. She looked startled as they entered. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, she said, smoothing her skirt. I was arranging Mr. Bramwell's study flowers when Mrs. Cartwright summoned me. My heart still trembles. Poirot offered a kindly smile. Mademoiselle, I seek only truth. Pray recall your duties yesterday morning. Miss Fairchild set down her cup with a slight tremor. I served Mr. Bramwell his tea at 8 o'clock. He preferred it before breakfast. I left the conservatory at 9:15 to prepare his letters in the library. I did not see him again until the bell summoned staff at 6. Hastings frowned. Yet Dr. Elliot says the tea was administered late. Fairchild's eyes widened. Late? No, I always serve at 8 precisely. I used his own silver teapot. She glanced down at the cup in her hand. That is my tea, monsieur. Poirot gestured gracefully. May I examine your teapot, then, and the cups used this morning? She hesitated, then led them to the drawing-room, where silver tea services rested upon a sideboard. Poirot donned white gloves and lifted the teapot lid. Inside, the teapot lay empty, but at its spout a faint smear of green patina clung like a remnant of tarnish. Poirot fingered the mark. Hastings peered over his shoulder. That matches the patina we saw on the balustrade. Miss Fairchild's lips parted. Impossible! My polish does not touch that set. Poirot set the teapot down and offered a small phial to her. This is the antimony tincture used by Dr. Elliot. That mark suggests the antimony was rinsed down the spout. Then the digitalis was added to the tea within. Fairchild's courage buckled. She sank onto a chaise. I did not mean to kill him. He forbade my courtship with Mr. Roscoe, the gardener I love. When he discovered my letters, he threatened to dismiss me and ruin Joseph. I turned to poison, foxglove in the garden for the first dose, and I stole the doctor's antimony. Last night, I meant only to make him ill, to frighten him into forgiveness. I never expected him to die so quickly. Poirot's gaze was gentle but firm. Your motives were passionate, but crime, however inflicted, bears consequences. Yet the second blow, delivered by Mr. Harper in panic, muddied your design into a tragedy of greater horror. Miss Fairchild buried her face in her hands. Oh, heavens, what have I done? Outside, Hastings and Poirot paused in the corridor's gloom. Hastings exhaled. I never suspected the gentle governess Hercule. Yet love and desperation, Poirot finished. Yes, Hastings. Miss Fairchild's confession reveals the careful planning of poison and the reckless improvisation of violence. Two conspirators, unaware of each other's acts, combined to create the perfect murder. They re-entered the drawing-room, where Lady Arabella had assembled the household. Fairchild and Harper waited, each trembling before the group. Poirot addressed the gathering. Lady Arabella, we have discovered that Walter Bramwell was first poisoned by Miss Fairchild, and then struck with a candlestick by Mr. Harper, who believed he was finishing an accident. Both must answer for their deeds. Lady Arabella's face crumpled with sorrow. My brother, betrayed by two whom he trusted. Oh, the cruelty of it! Poirot inclined his head. Indeed, madam. And though both acted from human passions, fear, love, desperation, the law must now determine their fates. Hastings placed a consoling hand on Lady Arabella's shoulder. At least the full truth is known. Dr. Elliot stepped forward. I shall ensure proper care for Miss Fairchild, and that Mr. Harper's confessions are recorded accurately. Poirot released a soft breath, and Ivyland Manor may now begin to heal. Yet let this cautionary tale remind us that even the ideal petals of nobility may conceal venom, and that justice, however delayed, ultimately prevails. As officers arrived to escort the two suspects, the household watched in grim silence. In the grand hall, the Peacock Staircase loomed above them, its mosaic eyes gleaming in the fading light. a silent witness to the malice and remorse woven into its stones. Captain Hastings clasped Poirot's arm. "Well, Hercule, dual villains, few cases can top that." Poirot's expression was solemn. "Yes, Hastings, but remember, it is not the crime that defines us, but the search for truth. Only then can we find peace amid the jagged stones of betrayal." And so, Ivyland Manor fell silent once more, its peacock eyes unblinking as they carried the whispers of malice for all who dared to wander or to fall upon the staircase of fate. Chapter 5. A fragile dawn, Ivyland Manor awoke slowly. The first, tendrils of dawn brushing pale gold across its ancient stone facade. The night's heavy mist had lifted, revealing dew-laden lawns and the intricate pattern of rose beds that surrounded the grand Peacock Staircase. Yet beneath this tranquil veneer lay the manifold sorrows and revelations of 2 nights past. The confessions, the poison, the fatal blow, and the mingled guilt of 2 souls driven by desperation. Lady Arabella Bramwell stood on the broad terrace, wrapped in a deep shawl of forest green, her silver hair catching the dawn light. She gazed at the carriage that would soon bear her steward, Giles Harper, away to face the consequences of his actions. Though he had confessed to striking his brother, Walter Bramwell, with the bronze candlestick that fateful night, Lady Arabella's heart ached at the knowledge that he too had been a victim, caught between loyalty to his master and his own overwhelming debts. She remembered Harper's trembling voice, his tear-streaked cheeks, and the anguish in his eyes as he admitted his fear of disgrace. Now, beneath the hush of the new day, she felt the full weight of mercy and justice balanced precariously. Miss Violet Fairchild, the governess, emerged from the servants' wing clutching a simple satchel. Her fine features, once so composed, were now drawn with regret. She had confessed to administering the initial dose of digitalis and antimony in Master Bramwell's morning tea. A misguided act born of love for the gardener, Joseph Roscoe, and a desperate wish to protect his livelihood. Though she had meant only to frighten Lady Arabella's brother into leniency, the toxins had weakened him long before Giles Harper's blow brought the tragedy to finality. As she waited by the ivy-clad wall, her gaze drifted to the rose bushes that lined the path, their blossoms unfurling like silent witnesses to her folly. "Miss Fairchild," Lady Arabella said gently, approaching the governess, "I cannot undo what has been done, but I offer you my forgiveness, and my hope that one day you may forgive yourself." The governess's shoulders trembled, and tears fell as she whispered, "Thank you, my lady. I shall carry this lesson always." In that moment, beneath the soft glow of dawn, the 2 women shared a fragile peace, born of hard-won truth. Captain Hastings stood near the carriage, adjusting his scarf against the morning chill. He had watched the events with a mixture of duty and compassion, but now he allowed himself a moment's reflection. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "what a tangle of fear and love brought us here." He glanced at Poirot, who sat quietly in the carriage's stern seat, his dark coat buttoned, his hands calmly folded in his lap. Hastings climbed aboard and took his place beside Poirot. "And what now, my friend?" he asked softly. 2 confessioners, 2 betrayals, and 2 paths toward justice. How do we restore balance to this household? Poirot inclined his head. "We do what we have always done, Hastings. We leave the wheels of the law to turn, but we trust that mercy, when merited, may guide their motion, and we allow Ivyland Manor to begin anew, its wounds acknowledged, and its guardians who remain to tend its healing." The carriage door closed with a soft thud, and Harper stepped forward to bid farewell. His once proud uniform hung loosely on. His shoulders and his hands were marked by nervous tremors. Lady Arabella offered him a final embrace. "Go with courage, Giles," she said, "and know that you depart under my protection, no matter what befalls you." Harper's voice cracked as he replied, "Your kindness honours me beyond measure. My lady, I shall endeavour to atone for my sins and repay your grace with every measure of my remaining days." The driver's whip cracked, and the horses moved forward, their hooves echoing upon the gravel drive. Ivyland's gate swung open, and Harper's carriage rolled into the waking world, leaving Lady Arabella, Miss Fairchild, and the household, watching in silence. Inside the manor, the servants gathered in the drawing-room. Mrs. Cartwright, the housekeeper, with her hand pressed to her heart. Joseph Roscoe, the gardener, mud-stained boots reflecting humility and relief. Emily Talbot, the parlour-maid, eyes wide with contrition. And Mr. Perkins, the chauffeur, standing apart with a perplexed expression, relieved to discover his own innocence. Dr. Elliot, summoned once more, offered a quiet reflection on the events. "This day," he said, "we have seen the poison of hidden despair and the violence of panic strike a noble family. May their lessons be as potent antidotes against fear and despair in us all." Poirot, stepping into the centre of the room, raised a hand for silence. His little grey cells had passed every nuance of motive, every shard of evidence, and now he spoke with the calm authority that had guided countless unravellings. "My friends," he began, his voice both grave and compassionate, "Ivyland Manor endured a sorrow born of love, untempered by counsel, and fear unguarded by honesty. Two, in their terror and desperation, sought to guard what they held dear, only to destroy that which they would protect." He paused, letting the truth settle, like dust in a sunbeam. "Now, as this chapter of tragedy closes, I urge you to remember that remembrance itself is a gift. Do not seek to forget these events, for in forgetting lies the risk of repetition. Rather, let Ivyland's peacocks, whose carved eyes bear eternal witness, remind you always that one must watch over the fragile human heart, lest temptation to secrecy and self-preservation cast one down these very steps." Mrs. Cartwright stepped forward, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. "Monsieur Poirot, you have guided us through darkness. I shall follow your counsel in this house. Frankness among servants, kindness to all, and vigilance against despair." Miss Fairchild added, voice steady, "I too pledge to serve with open honesty, and to protect my charges not with deceit, but with truth." Joseph Roscoe nodded, placing his calloused hand over his heart. "And I shall tend these gardens with the same care I would give my own soul, mindful that beauty and danger share the same soil." Emily Talbot and Mr. Perkins echoed their pledges, each determined to bear the lessons forward. Poirot turned at last to Lady Arabella. "Madame, the hour is late, but your spirit endures. You have faced heartbreak with dignity and mercy. Pour me, Ivyland Manor's future shine brighter for the tribulations of the past." Lady Arabella's eyes glistened. "Thank you, monsieur. I see now that our truest inheritance is not wealth or land, but the bonds of trust we weave among us." Evening shadows gathered as the household dispersed to their duties, with hearts heavier yet wiser. At the base of the Peacock Staircase, Hastings lingered to examine the now polished balustrade, its bronze feathers gleaming anew. He tapped gently upon the lapis eyes. "May these never again conceal malice, but rather reflect the vigilant care you have taught us, Hercule." Poirot joined him, adjusting his gloves. "Yes, Hastings, for in vigilance tempered by compassion lies our greatest safeguard. And Ivyland Manor, its tragedies laid bare, may now breathe freely beneath the watchful eyes of its stone peacocks, ever mindful that love, spoken in truth, need fear no fall." On the terrace, the moon rose silver over hedges sculpted in the shape of peacock tails. Beneath its light, Lady Arabella stood alone, gazing upward with quiet resolve. She clutched a single rose from the garden, a bloom that had survived winter's frost, and whispered into the night, "For Walter and for all who loved him, may this fragile dawn bring only peace." Within the manor, candles flickered behind lace curtains, and the hush of sleep settled over the corridors once more. Ivyland held its breath, a family broken, yet unbroken by truth, a household scarred, yet cleansed by confession. And when morning came, the risen sun would find them ready to begin anew, their fragile dawn transformed into a steadfast day, guided by the watchful eyes of peacock feathers and the gentle art of speaking truth at last. Chapter 6. Light Beyond the Stairs. The dawn that followed Ivyland Manor's darkest sorrows broke with rare gentleness. Soft pearlescent light spilled across the dew-kissed lawns, and the peacocks that roamed the estate's gardens, long silent witnesses to tragedy, now greeted the new day with tentative fanfare. Within the grand hall, the shadows cast by the Peacock Staircase retreated beneath the morning sun, and with them retreated the weight of grief that had settled over the household. Lady Arabella Bramwell moved through the corridors with measured grace, her mourning robes replaced by a gown of dove grey that spoke of renewal rather than despair. She paused before the staircase, resting one hand upon the polished balustrade. For a moment she closed her eyes, recalling the events that had unfolded here. Her brother Walter's last fateful steps, the deadly blow, and then the hidden poison that had sealed his fate. But now she breathed deeply and let that sorrow flow away with the morning breeze. "Ivyland," she whispered to the silent manor, "we shall heal." In the servants' wing, Mrs. Cartwright, the housekeeper, supervised breakfast preparations with a steady hand. Gone was the pallor of shock. In its place shone purpose. She oversaw the men setting the long refectory table for the staff, who would gather each morning at 9, not only to dine, but to share tidings and pledges of mutual care. In the days to come, Ivyland's servants would speak openly of fears and debts, of griefs witnessed and burdens borne, that the poison of silence might never again take root. Joseph Roscoe, the gardener, carried trays of freshly baked rolls into the kitchen. His mud-stained boots had been scrubbed clean, yet he remained mindful of the green patina that had once marked his footsteps in the hall. He paused by the back door, gazing at the rose garden, where foxglove still nodded in the breeze. Those flowers had given both life and death. First the gift of heart medicine, then the scourge of lethal toxin. With reverence he clipped the foxglove at root's edge, gathering the blooms for Dr. Eliot's pharmacopoeia, never again to be plucked in secret. "I will tend these borders with honesty," he vowed. Miss Violet Fairchild, free from her governess's duties, packed her modest satchel under the sympathetic eye of Lady Arabella. The governess's lesson in secrecy had cost her dearly. A near-fatal misuse of foxglove and antimony, followed by a public confession that fractured her pride. Yet in that fracture she found unexpected redemption. Lady Arabella offered her a reference for a position at a nearby seminary, where she might teach children with a new wisdom forged in regret. As they parted on the terrace, Miss Fairchild turned back. "My lady," she murmured, "thank you for your mercy." Lady Arabella smiled, pressing the governess's hand. "Go with hope, Violet." Giles Harper, the steward who had struck the fatal blow, awaited his summons at the manor gates. Though remanded to the authorities, he had received Lady Arabella's assurance of fair treatment, an act of compassion that buoyed his courage. The carriage arrived to convey him to the county magistrate, and as he stepped forward, he paused to glance back at the manor he had served faithfully for decades. "I have erred grievously," he whispered, "but I depart with hope that my atonement might one day return me to these halls." Captain Hastings and Hercule Poirot, their roles as detectives concluded, lingered in the library's muted warmth. Hastings signed the final inquest documents, assuring Lady Arabella that the butler's confession and Miss Fairchild's admission would form the cornerstone of the legal proceedings. Poirot, meanwhile, examined the manuscripts in the oak bookcases, family ledgers, botanical journals, and the Bramwell's genealogical scrolls, seeking any final clue that might bind the household's wounds. But no hint of further treachery emerged. Only the quiet promise of truth upheld. "Mon ami," Hastings said softly, "we have done all that kindness and justice require." Poirot tapped his moustaches. "Yes, Hastings, Ivyland stands ready to greet a new era, one in which the Peacock's eyes watch not for secrets, but to reflect the care of every hand upon every stair." That afternoon, the Bramwell family gathered for a private memorial in the chapel tucked beneath the east wing. Lady Arabella lit a single candle at the altar, and Miss Fairchild read a prayer of atonement and grace. Hastings and Dr. Eliot stood as witnesses while Mrs. Cartwright arranged lilies at the chapel's entrance. Giles Harper, escorted by constables, knelt at the steps and offered a contrite prayer, tears flowing freely. The hush in that sanctuary was a balm, a collective hope that even the deepest wounds of the heart might be healed through honesty and compassion. When the service concluded, Lady Arabella placed a wreath of white roses upon the altar. "For Walter," she whispered, "and for all souls lost to fear, may they rest in peace." In the days that followed, Ivyland Manor underwent subtler restorations. Stairs and floors were polished until the marble gleamed without a trace of patina. Foxglove was replaced by lavender and rosemary in the garden. The Peacock Staircase's bronze feathers received fresh lacquer, their lapis eyes glinting not with watchful accusation, but proud beauty. Each afternoon, Lily Roscoe, Joseph's young daughter, wandered among the shrubs, scattering petals and learning anew the language of flowers, how humility grows from sorrow, and how compassion blossoms into hope. Lady Arabella oversaw changes in household governance, weekly councils where servants voiced concerns freely, stricter accounting to guard against hidden debts, and a renewed emphasis on charity to support those in distress. Ivyland's newsletter, once a quarterly ledger of domain affairs, now included pastoral reflections on honesty, stewardship, and communal care. Captain Hastings, invited to attend one such council as guest of honour, raised a glass of elderflower, cordial in tribute. To Ivyland's new dawn, he toasted, "May its light banish every shadow." The assembled household echoed his words, glass against glass, their voices blending in a cheerful refrain. On the first evening of the Manor's renewed calm, Lady Arabella and Poirot sat in the drawing-room, gazing at the flickering embers in the hearth. Outside, the full moon cast silver paths across the lawns, and the peacocks roamed freely under hedge and sky. "I do not envy your burden, mon ami," Lady Arabella said. "You carry the weight of many secrets, and yet you bear them not as a judge, but as a servant of truth." Poirot inclined his head. "Truth, madame, is the greatest gift we can offer one another. Even when it wounds, it provides the only path to healing." She sipped her tea thoughtfully. "And Ivyland, this place I love, it shall flourish once more." "Indeed," Poirot replied, "for as long as its people remain vigilant in kindness, its stones will witness not despair, but the steadfast bloom of compassion." Weeks later, as Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart for London, they strolled beneath a rose arbour where 3 new white blooms had opened overnight. Each petal was pure as innocence. First, to mark Miss Fairchild's atonement. Second, for Giles Harper's remorse. And third, for Lady Arabella's mercy. Hastings paused to inhale the perfume. "They smell of promise, wouldn't you say?" Poirot smiled, fingertips brushing a blossom. "Yes, Hastings, and in every flower lies a silent lesson. Even frail, beauty survives storms when rooted in honest soil." They mounted their car and waved farewell to Lady Arabella, Emily, Joseph, and the reassembled household. Ivyland Manor receded into the morning haze, its peacock gates closed only to guard against the past, not to exclude the future. And as Poirot guided the motor down the winding drive, he allowed himself a rare moment of repose, confident that Ivyland's fragile dawn had ripened into a steady day, one where sorrow, acknowledged and shared, had given way to the abiding light of truth and the gentle art of mercy. Thus closed the chapter of The Death on the Peacock Staircase, an affair of poison and panic, of secrets unveiled and forgiveness bestowed. But in every new dawn that followed, the echoes of that tale remained, woven into the very stones of Ivyland, to remind all who passed beneath its silent peacock eyes that the greatest victory lies not in concealment, but in the courage to let truth shine forth at last. Chapter 7. The Guardians of Ivyland. The weeks that followed Walter Bramwell's death passed in a quiet flurry of restoration, remembrance, and resolve. Ivyland Manor, once steeped in grief and suspicion, now welcomed spring's soft green promise. The peacocks roamed freely through blooming gardens. The grand hall, once echoing with hushed rumours, now resonated with purposeful activity, and at the heart of it all stood Lady Arabella Bramwell, determined to honour her brother's memory by transforming tragedy into renewal, and to safeguard her home against the shadows that had stalked its stairs. At dawn, the manor's staff gathered for the first of many weekly councils in the sunlight-drenched servants' hall. Mrs. Cartwright presided with gentle authority, her once rigid posture softened by the camaraderie she now fostered. Joseph Roscoe, newly appointed head gardener, presented his plans for replanting foxglove in a dedicated medicinal border, clearly marked and tended under Dr. Eliot's supervision. He spoke with pride. These foxgloves shall no longer hide in secret corners, but stand openly, reminders of nature's dual gifts of healing and harm. Next, Emily Talbot described the revised silver polish rota, ensuring that only Mrs. Cartwright and Mr. Perkins handled the peacock feather balustrade each week to prevent accidental patina transfers. Miss Fairchild, restored to her duties as governess, offered to organise evening tutoring sessions for the manor children, lessons that would include not only reading and music, but also honest discussion of moral courage and responsibility. We learn not only from books, but from the choices we make when truth demands its due. As they spoke, Giles Harper, seated at the head table, met each eye with solemn humility. Though his days ahead would be occupied with atonement and restitution, he vowed to support every household reform, so that Ivyland's foundations, once cracked by secrets, might now hold firm on transparency and trust. Behind the scenes, Lady Arabella worked with unflagging energy. She met with Dr. Eliot each morning to review the medicinal garden's progress, ensuring that plucking foxglove for digitalis would be carefully monitored, and that no antimony tincture lay within easy reach of those tempted by despair. She commissioned a small herbarium, a beautifully bound volume of pressed blooms and botanical notes, displayed in the conservatory as both educational tool and reminder that nature's beauty carries cautionary tales. In the library, she gathered her closest confidants, Poirot and Hastings among them, to plan the reopening of Ivyland's archives as a house of stories and lessons. There, family ledgers, journals, and even Miss Fairchild's own letters would be exhibited, alongside explanatory plaques. Within these volumes lie the human heart's urgings: love, despair, loyalty, and redemption. Learn from our errors, so that your own steps find steadier ground. Poirot, ever watchful, offered guidance on curation. Truth, once confined to private pages, carries power when shared. Let Ivyland's visitors see how mercy and justice, entwined, guide us beyond mere retribution. Hastings, invigorated by the project, promised to help recruit local volunteers. Villagers eager to tell their own tales of courage and sorrow, weaving Ivyland's narrative into the wider community's tapestry. The centrepiece of Ivyland's renewal remained the Peacock Staircase itself. Under the hand of a skilled restorer, the bronze feathers were cleaned and lacquered, the malachite eyes polished until they caught the sun's rays like living jewels. A small plaque installed at its base now read, "This staircase once bore witness to tragedy. May its eyes now guard the light of honesty and compassion." Miss Fairchild, now joined by Emily, assembled fresh bouquets of lilies and rosemary along each landing. Lily, the gardener's young daughter, pressed vases into place, her small hands sure and deliberate. So every step taken here brings breathing space to a house that almost forgot how to trust. Visitors marvelled at the result. An emblem, not of opulence alone, but of vigilance reborn, each feather a sentinel against deceit, each eye a promise to speak and uphold the truth. Eager to celebrate Ivyland's transformation, Lady Arabella organised a modest concert in the garden pavilion. Miss Fairchild, herself an accomplished pianist, arranged piano duets of her late charge's favourite nocturnes. Joseph's daughter Lily sang folk ballads, and Giles Harper, though still shadowed by remorse, read aloud a heartfelt poem he had written during solitary vigils at the chapel altar. Poirot and Hastings attended, seated beneath lanterns hung on rose-laden trellises. Poirot, cup of cordial in hand, observed the assembled friends and staff. "See how music binds the broken-hearted, Hastings. In song we find shared breaths, and in breath we find the courage to live anew." Hastings nodded. "A fitting tribute, Hercule." Ivyland's darkness seems a distant memory beneath these notes, as the concert ended with Miss Fairchild's delicate rendition of Chopin's Berceuse. Lady Arabella took the stage to speak. "We gather not to forget our past, but to honour it. In these melodies and these reforms, Ivyland Manor stands, committed to transparency, compassion, and the unwavering belief that truth is the greatest light." Her words, echoing through the still night air, were met with heartfelt applause. Flowers cast at her feet as tokens of respect and renewed hope. With spring advancing to summer, Ivyland's staff settled into their new roles. Nurse Harriet, invited to return as family caretaker, led weekly wellness sessions for villagers, offering tea, advice, and gentle counsel. She placed equal emphasis on nurturing both physical health and emotional honesty. "A burden shared is a burden halved," she would tell them, "and in truth we find the strength to heal." Emily Talbot, having trained under Miss Fairchild, assumed the role of junior companion to Lady Arabella's nieces visiting for the holidays. She arranged daily reading circles that included fables of moral courage. "Small voices can speak truths that echo far beyond these walls," she told the children. Mr. Perkins, inspired by the herbarium's lessons, offered to train as a groundskeeper's assistant, learning the safe cultivation of herbs to guard against secret poisons for the rest of his days. Even Giles Harper, though absent, remained intimately involved through letters to Lady Arabella and Dr. Elliot. He described the magistrate's lenient sentence, house arrest rather than prison, and his tasks of charity in the neighbouring village, restoring goodwill and repaying his debts in service. "Ivyland entrusted me with its secrets. I shall now entrust these to my own hands, so that no living soul fears the dark." By midsummer, Ivyland Manor introduced a new annual tradition, the Festival of Feathers and Truth. At its heart was a procession through the gardens to the Peacock Staircase, where each household member, servant, guest, and visitor alike, placed a white feather at the base. "For every secret we unearth," Lady Arabella proclaimed, "a feather of honesty we lay to witness our pledge to one another." Poirot and Hastings returned for the inaugural festival, witnessing Emily Talbot guide small chirping birds, symbols of innocence, into wooden houses erected by Joseph Roscoe. Miss Fairchild distributed songbooks of moral ballads she had composed. Nurse Harriet offered herbal tisanes from the medicinal garden, and Giles Harper, present by special permission from house arrest, laid the first feather himself, tears shining in his eyes. for the truth that saved me," he whispered, his voice trembling with gratitude. As the festival concluded with a communal meal, tables laid on the lawns beneath lantern-lit trellises, Poirot raised his glass in a silent toast to Ivyland's sustained rebirth. To a home where every heart may speak, and every feather may shine in the honest light. Late that evening, when guests had retired and lanterns had burned low in the pavilion, Lady Arabella and Poirot strolled beneath the Peacock Gates. The moon's silver path guided their steps as they paused at the crest of the drive. Lady Arabella touched the gate's iron crest. "Thank you, Hercule," she said softly, "for guiding us through our darkest hour, so that Ivyland may stand ever vigilant." Poirot inclined his head. "Madame, it was your courage, your willingness to face truths that set all other deeds in motion. Evelyn's healing springs from your heart as much as from mine." She smiled, gaze drifting upward to where the Peacock Gates caught the moonlight. "Then may Ivyland never forget that truth, once spoken, lights the path to every new dawn." They parted with warm farewells. Poirot and Hastings climbed into their waiting car. The engines purr a gentle farewell. As the lights of Ivyland Manor receded, Hastings asked, "Do you think they are truly safe now, Hercule?" Poirot gazed back at the dark silhouette of the manor, its towers framed by dancing shadows. "Yes, Hastings," he replied. "They have learned that the stairs of temptation may lead to peril, but only when secrets go unspoken. Now, with honesty as both compass and counsel, Ivyland's steps shall lead them onward, in light rather than darkness, and so beneath the watchful eyes of bronze feathers and the chorus of summer's night, Ivyland Manor breathed anew, its people reborn as guardians of truth, ever mindful that every heart's frailty, once exposed, becomes the wellspring of its greatest strength." Chapter 8. The Echo of Winged Truth. A soft breeze stirred the rose-scented dusk at Ivyland Manor, carrying with it the faint rustle of bronze peacock feathers that rimmed the grand terrace. Lanterns hung from iron hooks along the balustrade, their flickering glow casting dancing patterns upon the stone. Under that gentle light, the household gathered for the annual Festival of Feathers and Truth's closing ceremony, an event that had become as dear to them as the manor's ancient stones. Arabella Bramwell stood before the assembled company, her dove-grey gown catching each lantern's gleam. Poised and serene, she lifted her chalice of elderflower cordial. Around her, servants, gardeners, tutors, and occasional villagers formed a wide semicircle. Mrs. Cartwright, the housekeeper, Joseph Roscoe, the head gardener, and his daughter Lily, Miss Violet Fairchild, now matron of the children's cottage, Emily Talbot, junior companion to the Bramwell nieces, Mr. Perkins, the head coachman, Dr. Reginald Elliot, and, distinguished by his stature and immaculate attire, Hercule Poirot, with Captain Hastings at his side. "Friends, neighbours, and dear guardians of Ivyland," Lady Arabella began, her voice clear across the terrace. "Tonight marks the 8th Festival of Feathers and Truth, 8 years since our beloved home was shaken by tragedy, and 8 years since we vowed to transform sorrow into vigilance, secrets into shared strength. Let us remember the lessons we have learned, that honesty is a light no darkness can extinguish, and compassion the bond that knits us ever closer." She paused, eyes sweeping the faces before her. "In honour of that vow, I invite each of you to place a white feather upon the altar of honesty." At her signal, Mrs. Cartwright stepped forward and laid a plume she herself had polished that morning. Joseph Roscoe placed one beside her, plucked with reverent care from the coop behind the stables. Lily added hers with shy delight. Miss Fairchild's feather glimmered in the lantern's halo. Emily Talbot and Mr. Perkins followed, and Dr. Elliot, with solemn grace, pressed his feather upon the altar's carved surface. Finally, Lady Arabella turned to Poirot. "Monsieur Poirot, may I ask you to place the final feather?" Poirot, standing tall despite his modest frame, drew from his coat pocket a single white plume. It shimmered like moonlight itself. A token given to him by Lady Arabella the first festival, when he had promised to safeguard Ivyland's truths. He laid the feather with delicate care. "Let these feathers," he intoned, "remind us that every trust entrusted must be tended, and every promise held aloft in open view. Only then can we walk our stairs without fear of falter or fall." With the ceremony complete, the guests withdrew to the festooned pavilion, where a long table bore platters of honey-glazed pheasant, herbed root vegetables, elderflower cakes, and chilled fruit tarts. A quartet of local string players, hand-picked by Miss Fairchild, tuned their instruments for an encore of the festival's signature piece, the Ivyland Hymn, composed by Giles Harper during his house arrest and refined each year by Miss Fairchild's arrangements. As music rose under the starlit sky, Lady Arabella and Poirot slipped away from the crowd, seeking a quieter vantage above the rose garden. Across the moonlit lawns, lavender and rose blooms nodded in the night breeze. The peacocks, lulled by the distant melody, clustered beneath a marble fountain at the garden's heart, an ornate basin carved with trailing vines and the Bramwell crest. "It has been a remarkable journey," Lady Arabella whispered, leaning on the garden's low stone wall. "From despair to this, an Ivyland reborn." Poirot nodded. "You have honoured your brother's memory by transcending sorrow with dignity. Ivyland's future glows in every lantern and every feather laid tonight." She smiled, her gaze drifting to where the peacocks stood sentinel, their plumage half furled like celestial fans. "We have learned that our greatest vulnerability lies not in the stones or stairs, but in silence and fear, and conversely, our greatest strength, the courage to speak, to confess, to forgive." His aquamarine eyes softened in the lantern light. "Yes, madam. Ivyland now stands as a beacon to all who would hide in shadows. Here we shine the light of truth upon every step." They lingered in silence, the festival's music drifting upward through the night. Then Poirot sighed gently. "Alas, my travels call me beyond Ivyland. Hastings and I depart at dawn for London. Yet know this, wherever I may roam, my thoughts will often return to these gardens and the peacock's watchful eyes." Lady Arabella placed a hand upon his arm. "You will always have a home here, Monsieur Poirot, and our deepest gratitude." He bowed slightly, his moustaches quivering. "You have been too kind. Now, allow me one final service, to present the festival's new anthem so that Ivyland's melody may reach every hearth." With that, Poirot led her back to the pavilion, where the quartet paused their tuning and the guests stilled in anticipation. He raised his hands, and Miss Fairchild began the first notes on her piano. The new Ivyland Hymn, a blend of Harper's Original melody and Lady Arabella's own poetic verses wove through the night air. Beneath the feathered watch we stand, heart to heart and hand in hand. Truth our lantern, hope our guide, in honesty we safely stride. The guests rose, voices joining Miss Fairchild's, while the quartet and Lily's clear voice carried the refrain. Eloise Bramwell, Lady Arabella's daughter and the festival's young ambassador, stepped forward to sing the second verse. Where shadows threaten fractured grace, we speak our faults and take our place. Forgiveness blooms like lilies white, and love restores our darkest night. And at the final chord a hush fell, followed by rousing applause. Lanterns swung in the breeze, and the peacocks raised their heads as if in salute. In that moment, Ivyland Manor, its halls once stained by poison and panic, stood united under winged beauty and the shared covenant of truth. Over the next weeks, the spirit of the festival endured in myriad ways. Mrs. Cartwright instituted Truth Teas each Wednesday, when staff gathered over brew and freshly baked bread to share concerns and triumphs. Joseph Roscoe led garden workshops, teaching villagers the safe cultivation of medicinal plants, emphasizing the foxglove's virtues and dangers. Miss Fairchild's evening readings became legendary. She selected tales of moral courage, staged by Emily Talbot and the village children in the manor's willow grove. Potato sacks, once a symbol of servants' fears, now held freshly harvested produce shared with cottages in the valley below. In the village green, Lady Arabella established a small Feathers and Truth library, stocked with books donated by Ivyland, family memoirs, botanical guides, moral philosophy treatises, and even Giles Harper's poetry, printed in modest pamphlets. Villagers flocked to borrow volumes and attend weekly lectures by Dr. Eliot on health and ethics. The local school adopted the hive's new anthem as its own morning hymn, taught by Miss Fairchild's assistant, Emily. Meanwhile, Giles Harper, having completed his sentence under house arrest, returned to Ivyland's service as Master of Ceremonies, charging him with planning festivals, presiding over the weekly councils, and ensuring that the spirit of the peacock's watchful eyes remained alive. He did so with humility, his remorse tempered by purpose. In his heart, he nurtured hope that one day his name might be unblemished in Lady Arabella's ledger of trust. As months turned to seasons, ivy crept across the manor's towers and roses, tangled in stately chaos, but Ivyland's ethos thrived in every branch and bloom. The Peacock Staircase, once the site of betrayal, now bore the footprints of festival choirs ascending its marble curve. Its balustrade, polished and bright, reflected the light of 100 lanterns. Children darted along its steps, laughter echoing where grief had once stalked. And so, when Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings returned to Baker Street, they did so content in the knowledge that Ivyland's wings had lifted from tragedy toward renewal. Hastings, polishing his revolver in the front room, paused to look at the Mantles family photographs and remarked, "Mon Dieu, Hercule! Never did I think a murder on a staircase could uplift so many hearts." Poirot smiled, folding his hands. "Ah, Hastings, it is not the crime that defines us, but the courage with which we confront its consequences. Ivyland's true masterpiece lies not in its stones, but in the hope it has nurtured among its people." He winked. "Our little grey cells rejoice in every new truth uncovered, and in every promise kept." Outside, the London dawn glowed softly over Baker Street, but both men carried the fragrance of Ivyland's roses and the echo of winged truth in their hearts, reminders that, in the enduring dance of darkness and light, honesty wears the brightest plume. Chapter 9. The Secret Beneath the Feathers. The calm that had settled over Ivyland Manor in the wake of last autumn's tragedies and the ceremonial healing of spring endured unbroken throughout the summer. Peacocks strutted beneath the sun-dappled oaks. Lantern-lit festivals and weekly councils brought staff and villagers into shared fellowship. And the Peacock Staircase, once a monument to betrayal, now gleamed in perfection, its bronze eyes polished so precisely that they seemed almost to blink in the candlelight. Yet it was upon precisely that staircase that a new mystery would reveal itself, one that threatened to unseat the carefully constructed piece and draw Hercule Poirot back to Ivyland's silent wings. It began with a letter, delivered to Lady Arabella one languid July afternoon. The envelope bore no crest, only a single peacock feather tucked beneath its seal. Inside lay a slip of parchment, inscribed in spidery script. Beneath the feathered curve lies the vault unseen. Seek swift and alone, lest the past's shadows claim you. Lady Arabella's fingers trembled as she read. She summoned Dr. Elliot, Miss Fairchild, and Joseph Roscoe to her study. Even Mrs. Cartwright lingered, drawn by the letter's cryptic summons. Dr. Elliot adjusted his spectacles. A secret vault. None have spoken of one. Joseph Roscoe frowned. Only the herbarium beneath the greenhouse, and the chapel crypt. No other hidden chambers I know. Miss Fairchild's brow furrowed. Yet the manse is old. Perhaps Sir Rowland Bramwell built a refuge here, lest intruders invade his treasures. Mrs. Cartwright shivered. I recall rumours of a vault for the family's jewels, but always dismissed them. Lady Arabella looked to Poirot and Hastings, who had arrived at her summons. Poirot inclined his head, moustaches quivering with anticipation. You have my permission to investigate, though I advise caution. The staircase's curve may guard more than ceremony. Hastings's eyes brightened. A hidden vault in the peacock's wing. Mon Dieu, Hercule, we're not done yet. Décor. Knight, Poirot, and Hastings stood at the foot of the Peacock Staircase, lantern in hand. The servants had retired, the festival music faded, and only the sound of distant crickets filled the warm summer air. Poirot studied the curve of the balustrade, his gloved finger tracing the malachite eyes. Recall the note, he murmured. Beneath the feathered curve lies the vault unseen. He tapped the sixth feather from the bottom. The same riser where Walter Bramwell's life had ended. At its base, a faint line scored the marble border. Hastings knelt and ran a fingertip along the seam, then pressed gently. With a soft click, the feathered panel swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a narrow recess. Inside lay a coffer of iron-bound oak, its lid secured by 3 small keyholes in the shape of peacock plumes. Hastings shone the lantern across the top. 3 keys, but we have only 1. Poirot smiled. Patience, mon ami. Let us explore further. He directed Hastings to replace the panel, then led him to the library where the Bramwell archives stood. There, beneath dust-speckled ledgers, he uncovered a vellum map sketched by an ancestor. 3 feathered keys hidden within the house, 1 in the chapel's recess, 1 beneath the greenhouse's herbarium, and 1 in the stable quarters. There, first quest took them to the chapel, where lilies still bowed before the altar. After careful inspection of the stone reredos, Poirot found a small lid box set into the wall, concealed behind a bas-relief of cherubs. Inside lay a bronze key, shaped like a plumed tip. "Key 1, Poirot declared. "Shall we proceed?" Hastings nodded, admiring the key's weight and craftsmanship. Next, the pair ventured to the greenhouse. Joseph Roscoe awaited them amid trailing vines. Under his guidance, Poirot located a loose brick in the herbarium's lower wall, behind which lay a small ebony chest. The lock clicked open with the chapel key, revealing another feathered key, this one of polished ivory. Roscoe shook his head in wonder. "I never knew this lay here." Poirot tucked the ivory key into his coat pocket. "Few do, Joseph, but now Iveland's past shall speak clearly." Their final clue led them to the stable quarters, where Mr. Perkins kept his carriage. Through a narrow trapdoor beneath a grooming table, they discovered a copper casket in the stone floor. Inside, nestling on velvet, lay the 3rd key, crafted of silver, its tip curled like a living plume. Perkins stared in awe. "So that is the last key." Poirot smiled. "And now, Hastings, we return to the staircase." Back at the staircase, Poirot placed the 3 keys into their corresponding keyholes. Each turned with a satisfying click. Then the iron-bound lid slid aside, revealing a hidden chamber installed beneath the steps. Within lay a coffer of dark oak, its surface stamped with the Bramwell crest. Hastings raised his lantern as Poirot pried open the lid. Inside, rest upon crimson velvet, were 3 artefacts: a finely wrought silver crown, a jewelled chalice, and a sealed parchment scroll. Lady Arabella joined them at that moment, summoned by the light of lanterns through the drawing-room windows. Her eyes widened as she beheld the chamber's contents. "My ancestors' treasures," she whispered. "They thought them lost." Poirot produced tweezers to lift the scroll. He broke its wax seal and read in elegant copperplate. "To those who unveil these baubles of the peacock's wing, know that true treasure lies not in gold, but in faith and union. Share these gifts in fellowship, lest vanity turn them to dust." Dieu! Arabella's eyes filled. They meant these as bequests to future Bramwells, symbols of unity. Miss Fairchild, hastening to join them, placed a hand on her lady's arm. "Then let us honour that legacy." Following Poirot's counsel, Lady Arabella convened her family and staff the next morning in the Grand Hall. There, in a solemn ceremony, beneath the teeming malachite eyes of the staircase, she offered the silver crown to the village council as a symbol of civic unity. She gave the jewelled chalice to the local priests to hold in trust for community celebrations, and she invited Iveland's household to read the scroll aloud each year at the Festival of Feathers and Truth. As each artifact passed from private vault to public guardianship, Lady Arabella spoke. "These treasures, hidden for generations, were meant not to isolate, but to unite. May their journey from secret chamber to shared trust ensure that Ivyland's future remains bright with fellowship." Applause rang beneath the staircase's arch, peals of approval echoing in the stone. The staff and villagers alike cried, "Hear, hear!" As the crown was lifted high, the chalice filled with spring water, and the scroll placed on the altar of honesty. That evening, Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart once more. In the moonlit garden, they bid farewell to Lady Arabella, Miss Fairchild, Joseph Roscoe, and the ever-watchful peacocks. "Hastings, Ivyland has revealed its final secret," Poirot said quietly. "Yet remember, the greatest vault of all is the human heart, and its treasures best when shared." Hastings smiled, gazing at the peacock gates. "A fitting coda, Hercule. I think Ivyland's peacocks have never looked so proud." As the carriage rolled away, Ivyland Manor shimmered beneath the moon, its staircase no longer a mere architectural flourish, but a testament to unity, vigilance, and the enduring power of shared truth. The final vault was empty of jewels, yet full of promise, the greatest treasure of all. Chapter 10. The Wings of Tomorrow. Summer's warmth lingered in the long days at Ivyland Manor, but a gentle melancholy now wove through its corridors. The great secrets of the Peacock Staircase, Walter Bramwell's death, the hidden vault, the shared treasures, had at last been brought to light. Yet as autumn's first gold edged the maples, a new chapter beckoned, one of endings and beginnings, farewells and fresh promises. On the morning of September 10th, the household assembled in the grand hall for a final ceremony before Hercule Poirot's departure. The Peacock Staircase stood resplendent behind them, its bronze feathers gleaming in shafts of dawn light. Lady Arabella, serene in a gown of autumn rose, took her place beside the marble balustrade. Mrs. Cartwright arranged fresh hyacinths and rosemary at the base of the staircase, each herb chosen as symbol of healing and remembrance. Joseph Roscoe's daughter Lily scattered petals along the marble steps, winding a path of ivory and gold. Miss Violet Fairchild, now matron of the children's cottage, carried a small music box, engraved with a single peacock plume, whose gentle lullaby had become Ivyland's emblem of harmony. Emily Talbot held the scroll from the hidden vault, read each year at the closing of the Festival of Feathers and Truth. Dr. Elliot stood ready with a glass carafe of elderflower cordial, its sweetness a testament to renewal. And at the centre, poised with calm dignity, stood Hercule Poirot, flanked by Captain Hastings. Lady Arabella opened the proceedings. "Friends dear to Ivyland," she intoned, "we gather this day not to mourn departures, but to honour the bonds we have forged. In truth and compassion, Monsieur Poirot has guided us through darkness. Now he departs for new horizons. Let us pledge once more the vigilance of our hearts and the unity of our community." She gestured to Mrs. Cartwright. The housekeeper stepped forward, lifting the music box. She wound the key, and its tinkling notes, soft as a sigh, filled the hall. Lily's petals fluttered like gentle applause. Mrs. Cartwright placed the box upon a pedestal, where it would stand as Ivyland's keepsake. May this melody remind us that honesty soothes anxiety, that every heart, once laid bare, finds comfort in companionship. Next, Emily Talbot unfurled the parchment scroll and read aloud the vow penned by Lady Arabella's ancestor. "We, the guardians of Ivyland, bind ourselves in fellowship beneath these eyes of bronze and stone. In truth we find our wings, in compassion our flight." As she spoke the final words, Dr. Elliot poured cordial into each chalice raised by the assembled household and visitors, gardeners, tutors, and even several village children who had grown up under Ivyland's umbrella of goodwill. Hastings offered a short toast, to wisdom unveiled, to mercy bestowed, and to the wings that carry us ever onward. All drank deeply. Then Lady Arabella advanced to Poirot and offered him a single white feather. He accepted it, bowing. She pressed it into his lapel. The feather's plumes quivered in the morning light. "Travel well, Monsieur Poirot," she said. "May your little grey cells find new riddles to solve, and may you carry Ivyland's spirit with you." Poirot's voice trembled only slightly. "Madame, Ivyland taught me that the greatest mysteries lie not in hidden passages, but in the human heart's capacity for darkness and light. I depart richer in understanding and ever grateful." After the ceremony, Poirot retired to the library with Hastings. The room's 60-foot shelves, once solemn and dusted, now brimmed with volumes of Bramwell lineage, botanical journals, and community records. Beneath the tall window, a mahogany desk bore an antique oak box, inside which lay the 3 feathered keys and the vault's artefacts, now entrusted to Ivyland's perpetual guardianship. Poirot ran his gloved fingertips along the box's lid. "Mon ami, this library holds more than books. It holds the unvarnished truth of human frailty and the redemptive glow of shared courage. I am honoured to have played a part." Hastings smiled, hefting his bag. "And I've never been so fond of a rural mystery. Ivyland's staircases, vaults, and foxglove may be behind us, but I suspect the stories it spawned will echo for years." Poirot packed the feathered keys into his satchel, alongside his favourite copy of Pascal's Pensées, a gift from Lady Arabella. He paused over the final page, reflecting on the interplay of faith and reason that had guided every quandary. Le cœur a ses raisons que la raison ne connaît point. The heart has its reasons which reason knows nothing of. He smiled, closing the book. In the late afternoon, the party assembled once more at the manor gates. The carriage awaited, drawn by the same chestnut horses that had borne Harper away years before, a vivid reminder of time's cycle. Mrs. Cartwright and Emily Talbot presented, Poirot with a wreath of lavender and rosemary, lavender to calm, rosemary to remember. Joseph Roscoe pressed a newly bound herbarium into his hands. Miss Fairchild and Dr. Elliot offered kind farewells. Hastings, perpetually loquacious, reminded everyone to visit London. Lady Arabella embraced Poirot, her gown whispering against the rail. "Promise to visit my friend?" she asked. "Madame," he replied, "I promise it. Ivyland shall remain ever in my heart, where its peacock eyes watch not for secrets, but for the flight of truth." He turned to Hastings. "Allons, our next train awaits." As the carriage rolled out, Lady Arabella raised her hand in blessing. The staff watched from the gates, Mrs. Cartwright's tearful wave, Joseph's firm nod, Emily's shy curtsy, Miss Fairchild's radiant smile, and Dr. Elliot's respectful bow. The manor's towers receded into the haze of late summer light. The peacocks strutted beneath the oaks, their plumage catching the glow like watchful sentinels. That evening, Lady Arabella dined with Hastings in the drawing-room. The hearth fire crackled, and a gentle rain began to patter on the windows. Hastings regaled her with tales of Poirot's idiosyncrasies, his fierce devotion to symmetry, his chocolate habits, his undying pride in his little grey cells. Distance, Arabella laughed, her eyes bright. "As for me, I find comfort in the knowledge that Ivyland stands on firmer ground," she said, "no longer haunted by hidden poisons or silent stares." Hastings raised his glass. "To truth, Lady Arabella, and to every life it saves." They drank, and the manor exhaled, a long breath of relief. Autumn's red and gold descended upon Ivyland, staining the rose gardens and cloaking the grounds in fiery splendour. The festival of feathers and truth continued each year, growing in attendance and renown. The village library flourished, its shelves stocked with Bramwell archives and moral tales. The herbarium taught villagers the art of safe healing. The Chapel of Remembrance, once private, opened its doors every first Sunday to a congregation large enough to fill its pews. Miss Fairchild's tutoring programme spawned a scholarship for underprivileged children. Anne Talbot, once the shy parlour-maid Emily, rose to become archivist of Ivyland's history. Joseph Roscoe's gardens supplied the local infirmary with herbal remedies. Mrs. Cartwright led charity drives for neighbouring parishes, and Giles Harper, pardoned after a month's confinement, returned to Ivyland, where he oversaw the festival ceremonies as Master of Feathers, his tears of remorse now tempered by tears of joy at renewal. As winter's first snow fell, Lady Arabella placed a single white feather atop Walter Bramwell's grave in the chapel yard. She whispered, "Brother, your spirit guides us still, beyond the staircase's shadow, toward the dawn of our finest days." Months later, a letter arrived at Ivyland, bearing the familiar monogram of Hercule Poirot. Lady Arabella and Miss Fairchild opened it together beside the hearth. "My dearest friends, I write from Nice, where the sun shines as warmly as your hospitality once did. My little grey cells have found rest, and yet, in my quietude, I recall the peacock's feather and the melody of your festival. May Ivyland's truth continue to bloom beneath its silent guards. Until our next mystery reunites us, I remain ever yours, Hercule Poirot." Lady Arabella pressed the letter to her heart. Miss Fairchild smiled and said, "He will come again, I know." Lady Arabella nodded, "And when he does, Ivyland will stand ready, with its wings unfurled, its hearts unburdened, and its eyes ever watchful for truth's next flight." As the fire in the drawing-room died to embers, Lady Arabella, Miss Fairchild, and Emily Talbot poured tea and spoke of the past year's marvels. Beyond the window, a lone peacock's cry echoed across the silent lawns, a note of beauty, a reminder that life endures in every feathered fan and every whispered vow. Ivyland Manor, once a stage for sorrow and secrecy, had become a sanctuary of shared truth, its people bound by the lessons of poison and panic, and lifted by the promise of mercy and honesty. And under the watchful eyes of bronze and malachite, they found a path not only up the Peacock Staircase, but into each other's trust, into each other's hope, and into the bright wings of tomorrows yet to come. Chapter 11. The Watchful Plumautumns. First frost had come and gone, leaving Ivyland Manor encased in the soft gold of fallen leaves. Morning mists rose gently from the rose beds, now trimmed of last summer's blooms, and readying themselves for winter's hush. Yet within those gilded grounds, life stirred in a new rhythm, one of reconciliation, remembrance, and resolve. As dawn broke on the 11th festival of Feathers and Truth, the great hall pulsed with quiet anticipation. On the dais by the Grundy fireplace, Lady Arabella Bramwell stood in a gown of burnished amber, its folds reminiscent of peacock plumage. At her side stood Miss Violet Fairchild, no longer merely governess, but Ivyland's Director of Moral Education. Mrs. Cartwright, now Mistress of Ceremonies, surveyed the gathering, and Joseph Roscoe, head gardener, leaned on his spade like a shepherd among his flock of villagers and staff. Hercule Poirot, a rare and welcome returning guest, took his place at the head of the dais, cravat impeccable, moustaches perfectly waxed. Captain Hastings stood nearby, sporting an Ivyland brooch in the shape of a peacock feather. Their presence bespoke Ivyland's enduring partnership with truth and vigilance. Each attendant held a single white feather. Over the previous year, these feathery pledges had become Ivyland's symbol of unity, offered by every heart in recognition of shared honesty. Now, as the morning lanterns dimmed in the daylight, Lady Arabella raised her hand for silence. "Welcome, dear friends," she began, voice clear as a bell. "We mark today not only as a commemoration of our vows, but as a testament to all we have learned since sorrow darkened these halls. Our festival's purpose endures, to remind us that honesty, once spoken, forges the strongest bonds, and that mercy, when extended, uplifts the fallen." She nodded gently to Mrs. Cartwright, who stepped forward to present the festival's new pledge. "I promise to speak my truth kindly, to guard another's reputation with compassion, and to keep Ivyland's feathers ever bright." One by one, the villagers and staff repeated the pledge, their voices weaving into a tapestry of shared resolve. Joseph Roscoe, his calloused hands clasping his feather, intoned, "I promise to nurture these gardens openly, that no flower of knowledge be plucked in secrecy." Miss Fairchild's clear soprano carried her words. "I promise to guide young minds in both learning and integrity, that truth may bloom in each heart." Even Giles Harper, restored fully to Ivyland's service, joined them via letter, read by Lady Arabella. "I, Giles Harper, pledge to honour service through honesty, to correct past errors with deeds rather than concealment, and to stand forever under the watchful plume." With the pledges spoken, Lady Arabella turned to Poirot. "Monsieur, your counsel has been our compass. Will you lay the final feather?" Poirot stepped forward, and with his gloved hand placed a single plume upon the marble altar. It fluttered, as though alive, a symbol of both his watchfulness and his faith in Ivyland's future. "May this feather," he declared, "bear witness to Ivyland's covenant, that truth, once unveiled, becomes the pathway to freedom, and that compassion lights the darkest stair." A breathless hush fell before applause filled the hall, petals scattering from balconies as if the very walls rejoiced. After the pledges, Lady Arabella led her guests to the secret vault beneath the Peacock Staircase, a chamber that now safeguarded no jewels, but Ivyland's truest treasures: the medicine chest of Joseph's herbarium, Dr. Eliot's handwritten remedies, Miss Fairchild's notebooks of moral parables, and the 3 feathered keys. Inside, upon a pedestal of carved oak, lay a new edition, a leather-bound book of witnesses, its pages blank, but awaiting the signatures and reflections of every festival's attendees. Lady Arabella dipped a quill in sapphire ink and inscribed the festival date, her words echoing through time. Here gather the names and vows of every heart sworn to Ivyland's light. Let this book stand as testament that truth calls us to vigilance, and that our compassion binds us ever together. One by one, guests approached to inscribe their own pledges and reflections. Beneath candlelight and lantern glow, the book of witnesses swelled with promises, some penned in trembling hands, others in sure script, yet all unified by a single truth, that Ivyland's greatest vault was not hollow iron and oak, but the open hearts of its people. With the morning's solemnities complete, Ivyland's gardens beckoned for celebration. Lanterns were hung from rose arbours, their honeyed light mingling with fireflies' glow. Tables were set beneath the oaks, offering elderflower tartlets, spiced cider, and harvest breads. At the pavilion, Miss Fairchild's children's choir prepared to sing newly penned festival hymns. Poirot and Hastings strolled the lantern-lit paths with Lady Arabella. A gentle wind rustled the leaves. Peacocks, now hand-reared chicks grown to dazzling plumage, roamed boldly. The air brimmed with the scent of lavender and late roses. "Hastings," Poirot said softly, "even today's gaiety stands upon the foundation of forces far more solemn. Sorrow transformed, secrets revealed, and hearts restored." Hastings pressed his scarf against the autumn breeze. "Aye, Hercule. Ivyland's stairwell once bore witness to tragedy, but now it watches over compassion's triumph." They paused by the stone fountain, its waters singing in the lantern light. Lady Arabella joined them. "I thank you both," she said to Poirot, "for showing us that no secret chamber need remain closed when mercy guides the key." Poirot dipped his head. "Madam, it was your courage to embrace truth that unlocked Ivyland's vault. All I did was navigate the lock." As the final chords of the children's choir, singing the line, "In honesty we take wing," drifted through the grove, guests rose to dance beneath lanterns. Ivyland's staff joined villagers in folk reels, their laughter echoing like peacock cries across the lawns. Later, when music receded and only the soft hum of crickets remained, Poirot and Hastings found themselves alone on the terrace's stone bench. The full moon shone above the Peacock gates, its silver light reflecting in the eyes of the bronze balustrade. Hastings exhaled. "I never thought a case of murder could bring such renewal." Poirot's aquamarine eyes gleamed. "Ah, Hastings, it is not the crime we remember, but the redemption we forge. Ivyland's wings take new shape tonight, ever mindful that the plumes of dishonesty lay us low, but the wings of truth lift us to grace." A single peacock cry rang across the lawns, a note of beauty, a pledge of vigilance. Ivyland Manor, once a crucible of fear, now stood as a sanctuary of hope. Under the watchful eyes of bronze feathers, its people vowed anew, year by year, to keep their hearts unburdened, their words honest, and their compassion unceasing. And as Poirot and Hastings slipped away into the autumn night, Ivyland's lanterns flickered like stars caught in peacock plumage, illuminating the path to every tomorrow made brighter by the echo of winged truth. Chapter 12. The Final Flight of the Peacock. The first light of winter crept across Ivyland Manor's frost-kissed rose gardens, gilding each blade of grass and each bronze feather of the grand Peacock Staircase in a fragile glow. In the stillness that followed the festival of feathers and truth, a hush descended upon the manor, an expectancy born not of foreboding, but of transformation's gentle promise. For today marked the culmination of a journey begun with tragedy, and carried forward by courage, honesty, and an unwavering faith in redemption. As the household stirred to life beneath pale skies, Lady Arabella Bramwell stood at her study window, a steaming cup of tea warming her hands, and reflected on all that had transpired. From the moment her brother Walter had fallen upon the staircase, Ivyland had known fear and suspicion. The secret vault, the poison in the tea, the impulsive blow with a bronze candlestick, even the hidden treasures beneath the steps, all had tested their bonds and threatened to unravel the very fabric of trust. Yet through each trial, the household had chosen truth over concealment, compassion over condemnation, and unity over division. Now, as snow promised a white mantle for the landscape, Ivyland prepared to celebrate the final act of that redemptive drama, the closing of the Book of Witnesses, the passing of its last feather, and the commissioning of a new emblem, one that would carry their shared covenant into every future season. At 9 o'clock, the household assembled in the great hall. 30 voices, servants in crisp livery, gardeners in their earth-stained coats, tutors, villagers, and the Bramwell nieces filled the vaulted space. Mrs. Cartwright presided over the long refectory tables, each place set with a sprig of rosemary and a white feather. Joseph Roscoe, his cheeks ruddy from early frost, placed a tray of freshly baked scones before the gathered. Miss Violet Fairchild, radiating calm authority, stood ready to read aloud the festival's enduring pledge. Dr. Elliot watched with quiet pride, while Giles Harper and Emily Talbot carried the Book of Witnesses and the final feather. At the head of the dais, Lady Arabella, her gown now a soft hue of pewter, rose to speak. The hush that followed felt almost sacred, as if the manor's ancient beams paused in anticipation. "My dear friends," she began, voice firm even as the tremor of memory flickered in her eyes, "today we conclude the chapter begun with sorrow upon the Peacock Staircase. We close the Book of Witnesses, whose pages bear the names and pledges of every soul, determined that our pain should yield purpose. Yet, as we give thanks for that bond, we also open our hearts to whatever challenges and joys lie ahead. May the covenant we've shared guide us, not as a chain that binds, but as the wings that carry us onward." Miss Fairchild stepped forward, placing the Book of Witnesses on a pedestal carved with peacock plumage motifs. Its leather cover was worn soft by the hundreds of signatures beneath its gilt edges. One by one, she read selections. "I, Emily Talbot, vow to speak with kindness in all I do. I, Joseph Roscoe, promise to tend Ivyland's gardens with honesty and care. I, Giles Harper, pledge to protect this home's trust above all else." As each voice fell silent, the book closed with a gentle thud. Then Dr. Elliot took the final white feather from Giles Harper's hand and held it aloft. I, Reginald Elliot, lay down this feather in witness to Ivyland's covenant. May its single plume remind us that honesty, once upheld, lights our path forward." With that, he placed the feather on the altar of honesty, a wooden trough beneath the hall's stained glass window, and the crowd stirred in quiet celebration. The Book of Witnesses was locked in a glass case, labelled, "Here lies Ivyland's testament, pledges of truth and compassion, sealed in trust until the end of days." But the final act required more than the passing of feathers. Lady Arabella, with Poirot's counsel, had designed a new emblem for Ivyland, a stylized evergreen branch entwined with a single peacock feather. The evergreen, she explained, symbolized unending hope, the feather, the watchful eye of honesty. Now she presented this emblem as a brooch to each member of the household, so that their pledges might be worn always, close to the heart. Giles Harper received his first, placing it over his left breast with trembling reverence. Emily Talbot hesitated only a moment before affixing her own, tears glistening in her eyes. Joseph and Lily Roscoe, Mrs. Cartwright, Miss Fairchild, Dr. Elliot, and the Bramwell nieces each received the brooch. Poirot and Hastings accepted theirs last, pledging with a firm nod to carry Ivyland's truth wherever they journeyed. "Let this evergreen emblem," Lady Arabella declared, "bind us beyond the gates of this manor, a sign that our covenant of honesty and compassion extends to every heart we touch." That evening, as twilight deepened into a sapphire sky, the household gathered in the pavilion for a final concert. The string quartet tuned beneath lantern light. Miss Fairchild directed the children's choir, and Lily Roscoe led a folk dance that had become Ivyland's hallmark. Yet for the closing piece, Lady Arabella had requested a lullaby, one she had written in the aftermath of her brother's death, a melody of solace and hope. As the first notes drifted across the pavilion, soft as a mother's whisper, the snow began to fall, each flake an echo of the white feathers pledged in the hall. The melody rose, weaving through the frozen air, and one by one, hearts unbound felt the warmth of shared remembrance. Poirot, standing beside Hastings on the fringe of the gathering, allowed himself a moment of reflection. "Hastings," he murmured, voice low, "the simplest tunes can carry the greatest truths. Ivyland's lullaby will outlive us all." Hastings smiled, tapping his toe. "A fitting end, Hercule, though I confess I shall miss these country mysteries." Poirot inclined his head. "Ah, but every ending carries the promise of a new mystery, another note yet unsung. For now, let Ivyland's gates stand open to whomever seeks peace." The next morning, by Lady Arabella's request, a letter was dispatched to Baker Street. "My dearest Monsieur Poirot, as the first snows blanket Ivyland, I write to express our deepest gratitude for your guidance and steadfast wit. Our manor has emerged from shadow into a season of hope, its people bound by truth's gentle wing. The peacocks roam free, the vault's treasures lie safe in shared trust, and the evergreen emblem now rests upon every breast. May your own journeys be as richly blessed. Ever yours, Arabella Bramwell." When the letter arrived at 221B, Hastings found Poirot already anticipating its arrival, a cup of hot chocolate at his elbow. "Hercule, a missive from Ivyland," Hastings exclaimed. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Ah, mon ami, my heart soared when I read of their renewal. Ivyland's final flight proves that even the fiercest storms yield to the calm of honest skies. Years passed, yet Ivyland Manor's story continued to inspire far beyond its rose and evergreen borders. The evergreen emblem became known throughout the Shire. Villagers wore it on special days, reminding themselves of Ivyland's pledges. The lullaby Lady Arabella composed was published and sung in distant parishes. The Book of Witnesses became a cherished artifact in local schools, its pages prompting students to discuss truth and compassion. Giles Harper, free at last, served as Ivyland's ambassador of goodwill, travelling to neighbouring estates to share the tale of the peacock's watchful plume. Miss Fairchild's moral tutelage spread to seminaries and libraries, while Joseph Roscoe's herbarium taught generations the balance between nature's gifts and its dangers. Mrs. Cartwright's Weekly. Councils became models for cooperative governance in nearby manors. Dr. Eliot's clinics, founded on Ivyland's principles, healed both body and spirit in towns across the countryside. And through it all, the Peacock Staircase remained the manor's proudest emblem, its bronze feathers glinting in sun and snow, each eye a sentinel of vigilance. Beneath its curve, concealed no more, lay the vault whose treasures had taught the greatest lesson of all, that shared truth is the world's most precious inheritance. On the 15th anniversary of the first Festival of Feathers and Truth, Lady Arabella stood once again before her household, older, yet every bit as determined. She raised her glass in a final toast, to Ivyland's future, bright with the promise of honesty. May our feathers ever guide us toward compassion, and our hearts ever remain open to the wings of tomorrow. And as the toast rang out, the peacocks crowed in the garden beyond, an ancient call now renewed in purpose, echoing the eternal flight of truth across every season, every year, and every heart.